Hello and welcome back to the BritVSJapan podcast. This podcast is essentially just a place for me to ramble on about stuff to do with language learning and other things that interest me. I'm Matt and welcome. Today we are going to be talking about RTK once again because we did get a comment in one of the previous podcast episodes where someone essentially disagreed with the use of RTK for a beginner. So I just wanted to kind of discuss that. I'm not going to go on a rant on why I think it's a good idea or why it's not, and say this person's wrong, because I do wholeheartedly believe that it is a case of whatever suits you the best is what you should do. There's no point in studying RTK for or doing all the kanji in RTK, not liking RTK, getting halfway through and then giving up, right? There's no point in doing that. Obviously, if you prefer to use Memorize or Duolingo or another way of learning kanji, and or wanikani or whatever, and you prefer doing that, and even if it's less efficient and it takes you to you manage to stick with it and you can keep going with it, even if it's less efficient, that's going to be the better way of doing things. So obviously, it is a kind of you got to have to try things and see what's best for you, and I will just sort of explain why I believe RTK is probably the best way of doing it and why it's the most efficient. And we can kind of discuss what this person was saying about why they don't think it's a good choice for beginners. So this person was saying, I'm doing RTK, I'm at 1,800 now, and it isn't the best way to go as a beginner. My main problem is that there is just so many super rare kanji that it will take me years to get my Japanese level so high that I will need them. The reduced RTK decks make much more sense for beginners, in my opinion. So I haven't actually seen the reduced RTK decks. I will probably have a look at them at some point. I didn't even know that was a thing. Obviously I've been out of the loop for a while. I'm guessing though that they're probably just an RTK deck that reduces that probably just condenses all the kanji down into the most useful ones, which I think is a great idea. There's the whole argument of the 80-20 principle, where 80% of what you need to know on a specific field is what was it? I can't remember. It's like 20% effort for 80% of what you need to know, or something like that. I do apologize. That's off the top of my head, and I can't remember what the rule is, but it's something like that. So you'd only need to know a very small amount of kanji to know 80% of Japanese, is what I'm trying to say, or be able to read 80% of Japanese. It would only be something like 500 to 1,000 kanji that you would need to know, and probably less than that to read 80% of the language. And so it's, when you look at it like that, it's not actually that bad. But then I think the main issue is the fact that you still need to know most of the first 2,000 most common, because even though the last 20% or the last 19.5% or however many percent up to that 2,000 kanji, they're obviously rarer and they don't appear as often, you still need to know how to read them. Now, obviously, this person, I don't know what kind of timescale they're learning Japanese from. If they are learning Japanese over a course of many years, then yeah, fair enough. You won't need to know those kanji for quite a while. And so, learning all the kanji right at the beginning, learning 2,000, 3,000 kanji right at the beginning might not necessarily be a good idea if you aren't the kind of person who's going to be blasting through and trying to cram in as much reading and listening as you possibly not listening obviously, but cram in as much reading as you possibly can from the get-go. If you're someone who's going to be getting straight into reading Japanese from the early stages, then I don't think there's any reason why not to learn at least the first 2,000 kanji straight away. The last 1,000 kanji in RTK3 aren't necessarily that important. Those are certainly rarer. They still come up in daily Japanese, but they aren't as common as the first 2,000. So if you do RTK and you're kind of concerned about this, then essentially what I would say is learn the first 2,000 at least, and get that under your belt. And if you're still worried about that, then learn at least the first 1,000 to 1,500. I would say would be a good healthy amount to give you a good base for reading Japanese. And so, yeah, I think the problem that a lot of people come across with doing RTK at the beginning, and this is something I saw on my RTK tutorial video that I have on my main channel, and is essentially, I don't think a lot of people know what to do after RTK, and it's something that I need to make a video on specifically for it. But essentially, yeah, what you would do after RTK, and essentially what I did, was I did a ton of reading with furigana and also using Japanese subtitles. So I would watch anime and I would also have the Japanese subtitles as well as the Japanese voice as well on screen. And what this did is it made me, especially with the subtitles, I didn't realize I did this back in the day, but this is again something I'll probably talk about in a video. The subtitles when I was watching anime forced me to speed read Japanese at a very early stage. Now, a lot of you may be wondering, is speed reading actually helpful? And there's a lot of research that suggests it's not really that helpful. However, if you consider the fact that the more kanji you physically see and you're exposed to from a time perspective, so that obviously if you're reading faster and you're seeing kanji faster, then you're seeing more instances where those kanji are used, and you're getting essentially more used to Japanese more quickly. And so even if you can't even read Japanese at the beginning, and like there's an entire sentence full of kanji and you have no idea what any of the words say, because you are being exposed to that from an early stage and you're getting a lot of it very quickly, you start to build up a very good, strong structure in your brain of how the language works, and it sort of builds upon that. So basically what you're doing is you're cramming your brain with a ton of information on kanji, and it's trying to like process it all, and then over a long period of time of doing this, you'll eventually start realizing what are words, and like, you know, what kanji is used in what situation, what different words mean, how different words are read. It all sort of builds up from there. So definitely getting a ton of exposure at the beginning is a very good sort of way of you know, going from just knowing RTK and not knowing how to read the kanji to gradually getting into being able to read them. It is a very difficult sort of process, and it's a very stressful process, I believe, because a lot of people don't see that transition as an easy transition, and a lot of people, you know, might struggle with it. But if you just keep pushing on with it, it's not actually too bad. It's a case of just sitting on your ass and watching a lot of anime, and having the subtitles and forcing yourself to read the subtitles, you know, which I don't think is too hard. I feel like for me personally anyway, if I have subtitles on a video, I tend to read the subtitles as opposed to focus on the video. I don't know if that's just a me thing or it's what we do as humans. I have no idea. But yeah, and then as for books with furigana, I would take my time with those. I would do that much more slowly. I'd actually try and read the books and try and like decipher what a sentence means or what a word means. If I didn't know what a word meant, I'd look it up in a dictionary. I might even add it to my Anki deck for my sentences. And so I remember the furigana reading, or so I remember the reading of the kanji in that situation, and so on and so forth. So yeah, that's what I would suggest doing after you've done RTK. And yeah, as this person does say, there are some rare kanji, and it is kind of interesting because I'm pretty sure RTK, even in the first 2000, he has some of the rare kanji earlier on, and the reason he does that is to make the story making easier. But if this person says saying that the reduced RTK decks are better for beginners, then that might be an option that you guys might want to check out. If I can find a link to them, I will post them in the description, and you guys can have a look if you want. It's not something that I've ever looked at, as I said, but if it is something that's interesting and I think it's useful, then it'll probably be something I'll talk about in a future episode. So yeah, guys, I hope you found this episode kind of useful. I talked briefly about what to do after RTK and whether or not I think you should do RTK. Depending on your situation, obviously. If you are someone who doesn't like RTK, then don't do RTK. Do something else. You know, it's not a be all and end all. As long as you learn kanji, you're good. Many people have done kanji without using RTK, so don't worry about it. So yeah, guys, I hope you found this podcast useful. Hope you found this episode useful. If you did, then you can support the podcast on the Patreon at patreon.com/BritVSJapan. The link will be in the description down below if you wish to check that out. There'll also be links down below to all the other episodes, all the other places you can listen to the episodes. And if you also want to ask your question or want me to discuss a certain topic, then feel free to comment down below in the YouTube section, or you can go into the description and there'll be a Google Docs form which you can submit your question or topic down there. So yeah, guys, thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you guys in the next episode. Thank you.